This is Joel Hamilton from Glass Lakes Capital Management, and I wanted to take you through just a high-level presentation on the financial planning process that we go through. We would start with our hypothetical couple, the Martins. Now, these are made-up people, and the numbers are made up too, but this first page, we just put in some basic information about them. The next page, which I'm not going to show here, would go through their assets and what type of account each asset is in, whether it's a 401k or a trust, what the cost basis is for the trust. All of these have different tax implications. And then we can also exclude assets as a funding source. For example, I don't ever want to sell my house to live on the proceeds in retirement. We can still show it for net worth purposes, but then exclude it from the plan as a funding source. The next step would be to come up with some goals. So we would come up with a base living expense, and then we would build things on top of it like healthcare, and maybe you're not driving the last car that you'll ever drive, so we should build on a recurring vehicle purchase, travel. Once we get all the goals and we have all the assets and liabilities, we can run a Monte Carlo simulation. So that would run 1,000 different orders of return on your assets and your spending needs and the timing of your spending needs to give us a probability of success. So we went through for the Martins and we put in the goals, and we have the base living expense, car purchases, trips, a new kitchen, and we inflate those things at 3%. And then for healthcare related expenses, we used a 6.5% inflation rate, which is important because if you were estimating that your first year retirement expenses for healthcare were going to be $10,000, in year 30, you would expect, if you were using a 3% inflation rate, to pay $24,000. If you were using a 6.5% inflation rate, you would expect just that year to pay $66,000. This is important to include in a financial plan because historically, healthcare related inflation has been much higher than inflation for normal goods and services. The next page we would go to is Social Security. Now, if we clicked on that button, it would pop up with maybe 6 different claiming strategies that made the most sense to your specific situation. Each one of them would have another Monte Carlo simulation run on it to give each claiming strategy its own probability of success. This helps us determine which strategy is the best for you. Along with the probability of success, it would also give us a break-even point. So the age that you must live beyond to make waiting make sense versus taking it as early as possible. Now the next page I'm going to show you is called the play zone. When we're in the play zone, we can make really easy what-if scenario adjustments. For example, what if Tom wanted to retire 1 year earlier or 2 years earlier? Or what if they wanted to spend $100,000 instead of 90? And if any of those bring the plan out of the green zone, then we can look at other adjustments that we can make to bring it back into the green zone. For example, if they wanted to spend $100,000 and it didn't work, maybe we could say, okay, well, what if you each worked 1 more year? So if it's really important to them to be able to spend the $100,000, then we can come up with, okay, well, maybe you need to each work 1 more year or two more years. So we can go through all these on-the-fly what-if scenario adjustments in the play zone. The next area that we would go to is called What Are You Afraid Of? A lot of people like this What Are You Afraid Of section. It lets them kind of stress test their own plan with almost doomsday type scenarios. For example, what would happen if the stock market went through a 2008 type correction today? What would that change my retirement picture to? What would happen if Social Security got cut by 25% or 50%? Or what if it just totally went away? What would that look like? What if I die early? How would that look for my spouse in their retirement? Do I have enough money to pay for a 24-hour skilled nursing facility if that happens down the road? Once we have your baseline information in the system, it's really easy to make these on-the-fly what-if scenarios. And if you're interested in going through something like this, just fill out our questionnaire and we can go through all of these situations using your specific information.